Now let's start building or start writing routes which are required for application, right? So in this application, what we are going to do, so we will create an application which stores list of users data in a file, in a JSON file in the server, right? So first we need five routes, right? First one, read user details or get user details by ID. So we'll have one unique ID assigned to each user. Then get all users. Then these two are get request. Then post, create new user. So how do you create new user? Then put update existing user, and then delete existing user, right? So these are the different routes which we are going to define as part of this application, and we'll also deal with file systems which we have learned so far in the Node.js development process, right? So let me add those routes. So first route, router.get, right? Router.get function request/user. So this route will give me all the users, because already in the route, in the by default it is users, right? So this will be users. So get all users, I can name it as get all users. You can follow any kind of syntax like hyphenated, or you can do this, get all users. Anything it's totally up to you, right? Then we need another router, get user details by ID, right? So here we will learn about two things: router.get ID. So I am doing something over here. Let me explain you what is that, right? Request comma response. So before even we go further, what is this? So these are called as request params. So here, whatever you call like this, slash users slash 10, then this ID will become 10. And if you call with some Vasudev, then this ID is going to become Vasudev. So like this, I can access the information in the URL. So these are called as request params, like this: constant ID is equal to request.params.id. So now whatever the URL user is going to hit. So because I should have a dynamic URL over here, because whoever is trying to hit the URL, he is going to send me the user ID. Now based on this user ID, I have to search in the file which I am going to create now and give the data. So these are called as request params. So see, this dot send, I'm just sending whatever ID which we received, right? So if you go here and users.get, if I send 10, I think I didn't start my application, npm run dev, right? Yes. So now see, when I requested for 10, the request.params.id was 10. Now I am requesting for 100, then it came 100. Then I am doing Vasudev, then it gave me Vasudev. So that's what the params are called as. And there are other types are also, like there are other types of query ways you can send data to the get request, like this: name is equal to right? Name is equal to something like this. So if you just do console.log request.query, so there are two different types. Params is part of the URL and which you have to define when you are defining your router. Now you can send additional information also in this way. This is called as query string. After your URL, you can put a question mark and then you can send name is equal to Iron Man. Now when I hit this with this URL, it still comes to this router only, but you see console.log gives you name is equal to Iron Man. So in this way you want to send any data and any number of data, age is equal to 100. So see, now the object, the actual router which hit what this only, but the request.query got now two more values, name and Iron Man. So this is the difference between params. Params is actually part of URL and query is something which comes after the question mark, something which comes after the question mark in the URL. So we define the get users by ID. We'll define the logic later on, and then we have to define a post request, router.post. So again, slash user is enough for me, or I can say create user function request comma response, right? And then I have to create an update, router.put update user, but here I have to send which user I have to update, right? So update user, and here I will send the user ID function request comma response and this over here, and then I have router.delete. So again I have to take the user input, which user I have to delete, right? Delete user function request comma response, right? Yeah, so these are the 5 different routes which I have defined, and now I have to start writing my code to save it to a file, right? So let me create a file for it. Users.json. So JSON is something like a file which stores the data in the JSON format, and here we will have the list of users like this. So all the users. So it's like a MongoDB, I would say, but here we will read and write to this file assuming that this is our database, right? So let me create a new folder, models, right? And inside this models I will create a new folder called as repositories, because all my logic will be sitting over here, repositories, and here I'll create a file, file system or user.js directly, users.js. So inside models and inside users.js I will have all the functions defined for me which can read and write to a database. So here my database is a file system, so I will expose functions which creates and deletes and updates in my users.json, right? So here the logic will be there. So let me add the logic. So what I would need 4 different functions. First function first I'll read the file, right? So constant or function get all users, right? Get all users. So every time what I have to do, I have to get the users data. Users is equal to I have to require the file system module over here. Constant fs is equal to require fs, then fs dot read file sync. So I'm reading it in a synchronous way, and I'm saying the file path as users.json. So this path is basically relative to the place where I am running my code. I am running my code in app.js. So the users.json is also in the app at the same place at the app.js. So I have given the route path as this, right? Now I have to say, or I have to send the data, that is return data dot users. So when I read the file, I'll get the entire object, right? And I have written a file now, read file sync, right? So it reads the file and it gets me the data, and I'm returning that data dot users. So now to export these files, export this all functions, I should do like this. So what I'll do, get all users is a function which takes no argument, and this. So this is a syntax where you are exporting a object of functions, and each object has key get all users, and you will have get user details by ID. So there is this one function, right? And then you will have create user. This will be one function here. You will take a user object. You take an object, right? So you have to save a new user. You have to add a new user. Then update user function user data, and then your delete user function user ID, right? User ID. So these are the different functions which are needed for me. So in the controller is my thin controller and fat model. This is what I am following, right? So controller is my just invoker of the repository functions. So what I'll do is inside the users router, I will import all of these functions. Require models slash repository slash users, and here I will get all the functions which I have just defined. Get user details by ID, create user, and then I have update user, and then I have delete user. So over here, whenever I get any request, what I have to do? I have to wrap it inside try catch, and then I simply have to get the data is equal to get all users. So see, I'm just invoking the function, and whatever data I got, I'm sending it to the request. And the way I'm sending it is code 200 success true. This is just a good practice. I'm sending it in this way, and data is data. So whenever you send response, it will be having a code field and success field and data property and what all data which we are sending. And if there is some error occurring in your code, then you can say console.log error. So you will first log that error, then you can say res.status. You will set it to 500. So 500 is some internal error occurred in your code, and you will send the data or the response as code 500, then success as false, and message as error.message, right? So this is a typical route way of defining the route in our thin controller fat model design pattern. So see, my controller is doing nothing. It is invoking a function inside the model. I have to still define the logic, right? I have to still define the logic. So it is just calling a function, and whatever data that function is going to return, I am just sending that data. So now I'll open my Postman. So because we'll be using Postman for sending all the requests. Perfect. So I'll create a new collection. The collection name is Code Sapiens CRUD application, right? So inside this, I'm going to add a new request. So first request is get all users. Here the URL is http:/localhost 3000/users/ what is the URL? Get all users. Now when I hit the send button, see, I got code as success true and date code 200 and success true, right? This is because the data is empty. If you just go to function.json and see what is the data over here, console.log data, right? And when I hit the API back, in the console you can see that this is a buffer. So we need to convert the data. We need to convert the data into the way it is required, right? So let's do that. So you can see that you cannot read the file directly in this fashion in the JSON. So when you hit the code, you see that there is a buffer of data coming. So for reading a JSON file, what you need to do is you need to use an inbuilt function, JSON.parse. This parses the buffer data and it gives us the actual data to us. Now when you hit the URL, see, now you can see that data is an empty array because users is an empty array, and when you see console.log of data, it is a object which contains the user. So this is how you read a JSON file. So that's one thing which you need to keep in mind, right? So how do you read a JSON file? You read it fs.readfile.sync and then you parse that immediately once you get the data. Now let me add some sample data over here in the users.json, right? Name is equal to Vasudev, place is equal to Hyderabad, and then age is equal to 100, and then mobile is equal to 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, yeah, whatever it is. Now when I'm requesting for the data, get all users, see, I got the user data which is present in my so-called database, that is a JSON file, right? Similarly, we will write another API, or we'll write this. So we don't have any ID assigned here. So what I'll do is first we will create the data. So we'll write an API to create the data, right? So where is our create API? Over here. So here, let me do try catch. So try catch is always safe way. Let me copy the catch logic because the catch is going to be same always. And here constant user is equal to create user. And how do you post? So you need to post the data now, right? So whatever data you are posting will be coming in request.body. So will be coming in request.body. So you will be posting name, age, mobile, comma, place, right? Name, age, mobile, and place. So whatever information you send in the post request, that will be coming in the request.body. Now let just to showcase you, I'll send the entire request.body, whatever data you are sending as the response. Okay, so I'll go here, I'll create a new request, add request, right? Here I'll say it as create user, right? So it will be a post request, And for the post request, the thing is that /users / create user. That is what my route is, right? So for the post user, you have a body to be sent. And what are these? XWW form URL encoded, raw. And what is raw? In raw, you can send the data in the format JSON. So now when you come back to your code or the app.js file, you see two middleware supplied over here, right? So one is express.json and the other is URL encoded. Those are the types or forms of data where you can send from your client to the server. So whenever you are sending data from client to the server, you have different ways you can send, wherein you can send a form data. In the form data, you can even upload a file. In the form data, you can even upload a file. And in the access URL encoded, so you are encoding in some format and sending the data. So right now, I'll send it in the form of JSON and I'll say name is equal to iron, or I'll send my name itself. Age is equal to 100. Then place is equal to Hyderabad. Then mobile is equal to 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. Right now, whatever I am sending in the request.body, the same data I am sending as response, right? Request.body. So see, whatever I am sending in the request.body, if you see, so whatever I am sending the data, that is coming as request.body. So now if I send some other data over here, like this, then that data is going to be received. So whatever data you are sending will be accessible in the request.body. Okay. Now the other two parts which I have explained. So these two are helping in parsing that data when the data is sent in the form of JSON or when the data is sent in the form of XW URL encoded. So if you see, when you selected the data as JSON, the headers, the content type is application JSON. And when you select the data type as text, the content type header is text plain, which we have discussed, right? So that the same way, when you want to send the data in URL encoded form, you have to add your key values, right? So key, name. So one second. So here I'm sending it in the JSON format, but if I don't supply this middleware, and I'm trying to send the JSON data, what will happen? So see, when you are not supplying that middleware, the data whatever you are sending is not appended or added to the request.body. So who is adding body? Who is adding the request body? This middleware or this express.json is parsing the JSON data which you are sending from the front end and appending to the request object inside our server. So just now we see, all right. If you comment out this, then the request response is empty. But when you are uncommenting this, you are getting the data. In the same way, if I send some data like this, name Vasudev, and now the header is URL encoded. It means I'm sending the data in URL encoded form, and when I send this data, see, this is possible because of this library express.url encoded. If I comment out this and send the data again, it is not reading the URL encoded data and it is sending me the empty object. So the use of these two is this, and the use of third one or fourth one is the cookie parser. Is when you're making the request from the browser and you want to store some cookies on the browser. Cookies are nothing but some piece of information which is stored in the browser local storage. So you can send cookies to your server, and server can parse that cookies. Let's say I'm logged in a website and my user number is stored in that website. So in the second time, to avoid re-logging again, I can send the cookie saying that this user is known to me. So you can directly send in the data. So cookies are something else which comes under advanced. So I'm removing it, right? Yes. So this is where we are right now. So we have to create the user. For that creating the user, we'll implement the function create user, right? So constant data. So what I'll do is, first I'll get all the data which is present inside the file, right? Because I have to not delete the data, I have to append the data. fs.read file sync. Now I have to add a new object, that is data.users.push user. So data.users.push user. So whatever new user object we are sending, we are adding that to the users array, and again we have to write it back to the file. That we can do with fs.write file sync, and the file path is users.json, and what data you want to write. The second argument is what data you want to write, that is json.stringify. So I have to convert back into the string, because this C file.write file takes the string as second argument. So how do I convert a normal JavaScript object to a string? This way, json.stringify. And if you want the indentation, so let me say fs.write file sync, and then I'll return the same user object which has given to me. Now when I call the create user, what I can do is simply constant user is equal to create user of request.body and res.send code 200 success true, and data is going to be the user object. Now what this is doing in the create user, first we are reading the file and getting all the data, and after getting the data you are pushing the new user object to the users array, and then you are writing it to a file, writing it to the same file. Now when I go here and send the new data, so this file currently has no data. Now I am sending my new object, right? And done. So see, code 200 true, and now I should be able to see the new user added to the file, right? And now when I go and fetch all the users, it should give me the data. That's it, right? So this is how we are adding the data, right? Now one thing is, here we lost the indentation. So previously it used to be like this, right? We lost the indentation. So if you want the indentation also, you have to supply second argument as null and the indentation space as 4. Okay, now let me delete this object, or let me add another person, Vasudev 2, right? If I send here, see, now what happened is we added a new array over here, new object, but I think it is overriding. Yes, it is adding. So 2 objects, and if I send 4, then 4 objects. So this is how the post operation is going to work. So get all users will now get all the users present in the database, and create user will create all the users, right? Next, what we will implement is get user details by ID. But if you see our users.json file, you don't have any ID. For that reason, what we have to do is we have to assign a unique ID to each user while we are creating as part of backend, so that in the backend people can have same names, right? So how do you identify them uniquely? You have to do this. You will need a module for that called as npm uuid. So I'm installing that module, and uuid will give me the way or function to generate a random unique ID, and v4 is equal to, so this is how you use it, version 4 of it, uuid slash v4. Now before inserting into the data, into the file, what you will do is you will say user.id is equal to v4. So this v4 function basically creates a random ID. So now when I run this code, npm start or npm run dev, right? So app crashed. v4 is not defined. So it is saying v4 is not defined. Why is it not defined? At what place it is not defined? Okay, uuid, I'll say yes. So now I think it's going to work. Yeah, it's going to work. So this is how I need to import the file, import the version. Now when I create a new user, so see, I got a unique ID of this type. So now I can insert multiple users, right? And if I go and check in my users.json, I have ID attached, right? This way, now my application is ready to send me the user details by ID. So constant user is equal to get user details by ID, and what is the ID? request.params.id. So whatever this guy is returning me, I'll just send it, I'll forward to the response. Success true, and data is going to be user. The same way the catch block. Same way the catch block, right? Now I have to implement get users by ID. So here I'll get the ID. Now I have to filter my array. So first I'll read the data, right? I got an array. Now I have to filter the array using the JavaScript filter function. Filter, and what filter I am going to apply? So filter is going to get me a function, a callback function. It is going to take a callback function, and here I have to mention the condition. So each element, right? Each element, if element.id is equal to the ID which I am sending. So element or user, I can say whatever. So the filter function takes a callback, and that callback contains each element in each iteration. So it reiterates every time. So if user.id, so user.id, so first time it comes here, and then it checks if user.id is what we are requesting for. Then if this condition is true, then I'll get the data user, right? So I have to check if no condition is matched. If user.length is greater than 0, then only it means I have the data, right? Or I can simply return user. And now if I go here and try to fetch the details of this user, I have to create a new route. /users/get, what is the route? Yeah, under ID, that's it. Yeah, so I'm calling this function, I'm calling this route with this ID, right? So see, I got the correct one. Now if I wantedly make a small mistake, then what will have? My data is empty. So you can fetch the details of a user by parsing the ID in the params, and that ID is passed to the get user by details, and we first got all the details present inside the DB, and we filtered that, and if the filtered array contains the user, it is going to visible on the output, otherwise it is not. So that's one way of doing, right? Now the other two functions which we have to do is delete user by ID. So let's do the same thing. Try catch, right? And let me copy paste this so that it saves some time for us. Yeah, perfect. So get user details by ID, right? Instead of get user details by ID, delete user and the same request.params.id. And when the user is deleted, so you have to delete now. So it means what I'll do is constant data is equal to json.parse fs.readFileSync users.json, and then I would say data.users.filter. So now I will filter all the elements except this one, right? So because I want to remove this from my array. So user, give me all the elements except whose ID is equal to this. So it's like this. So it will give me all the elements, all the users whose ID is not equal to the one which needs to be deleted. Now I got that array, right? Now I can simply, what I can do is, I can simply write it back to the file, that is fs.writeFileSync, right? WriteFileSync, and here I'll mentioning the path users.json and json.stringify of object users, and second argument is null, third argument is 4. That's it. So this is how you are deleting the user. So you are first fetching and filtering the array and writing back that JavaScript object back to the file. So now when you go here and type delete user ID, let me create a new one, right? HTTP localhost /3000/users/delete user and the ID. No, I have to delete an ID, right? I have to delete an ID. So I'll go here and I'll fetch this ID. So let me see if I'm able to delete this. That's it. So the operation is now delete. So see, success true, right? Success is true. So if you see here, I think my code is wrong. It is deleting all the objects. So, oh shit, the condition is false. Return. Yes. Yeah. Now if you see, that element is gone. So whatever the element was there which I was trying to delete, that element is gone. Success true. So this is how you delete the array. And the last one is updating the array, and this also looks the same way to me, right? I'll just copy paste this. So both in create and update, you receive the data in request.body. Request.body, and you call update user, right? You call the update user, and you will also send the ID request.params.id. id. Right now I have to implement the update user. So user object is I am getting, and then id object. So constant data is equal to json dot parse fs dot read file sync users dot json. So first I am reading it, then I have to find that object. So how can I do that? Constant user is equal to data dot users dot filter function. I have to find the object which id matches, right? User. So return users dot id is equal to id. So now I got the user object. Now I have to update the data. So it will be something like this: constant updated user is equal to updated user is equal to, or simply what I can do is I can delete the old array, I can delete the old object, right? So it means I can delete the old one. So here first I am deleting the old one, and then to the new users array I am pushing my current one user, and then writing back. This logic is perfectly fine. So first I am deleting the old object and then writing the new object back to the file, right? So this is how I update. This is how I am going to update it. No, this is how I cannot update because I am losing the ID over here. So I got the user object. And all I can do is I can map it. So I can use the map function, and when if user.id is equal to id, then you will return. So in the map you return each element in each iteration. So you will return current user. So I am using JavaScript spread operator and the latest object which user has sent me. So this will take care of overriding any details which user wants to, and if he doesn't wants to, then the previous values will be there. Else we are returning the same current user. So this gives me the users object, and simply I can write it back to the file. So we have implemented all our functions, right? Now let's update user and user, right? So let me do the update now. Put request, it's going to be a put http localhost 3000 update user. So I am going to update one user. I'll update this guy, right? And what is the update value I'm going to give him? I'm going to change his age to 200. Okay, so I'm changing his age from 100 to 200, right? Let's see. So it's saying cannot put. Let's see, cannot put. Why is it cannot putting? Outer dot put update user. Oh, we missed the slash users, right? Slash users. Now let's run the code. Yes, code is success. Now if I go back to my file, but the age is not updated. So some mistake in our logic. Let's identify what's the mistake. So users data.users.map, if user dot id, oh no, current user, I have to check for current user. If current user.id is equal to id, then update it. Now it will work. Perfect. So now age has been updated and remaining all columns are untouched. 300. Now I can see 300. Now I am moving it back to 100. So these are the different types of operations which we can do with our code. So if I quickly walk you through what we have done so far, I have created two routes, index route and our users route, so that I can segregate the routes, right? And in the users route, we define 5 different routes, that is get users, get all users, get user details by ID, create user, update user, and delete user. We followed the strict REST conventions that are following the put, post, and put delete method. And we followed thin controller fat model, where we just invoke a function inside the model which we have defined, and that model is going to do either insertion in DB, deletion in DB. In our case, the DB is the file, so it was always creating and updating the database according to the logic of file system, and that's the entire code flow from the start to the end. In the next, we'll see how you can add, apply, or apply middlewares, and you can intercept the request and response and control or use the express middlewares, right?